Hello and welcome to Become the Teapot. I'm Iain.
And so am I. And by the whirling winds of Watum, we are your hoary hosts.
Speak for yourself.
As always, we're traversing the astral plane betwixt film and comic books, and this episode, we're returning to the ever-expanding Marvel multiverse for some mystic mayhem with the Sorcerer Supreme.
That is to say, we're going to be talking about the 2016 film Doctor Strange.
And also Doctor Strange The Oath, a comic book limited series by Bryan Vaughan and Marcos Martin.
So don your cloak of levity.
And listen as we summon the Crimson Bants of Cyttorak.
And prepare to
Become the Teapot. Doctor Strange, for those of you who don't know, is a 2016 film set within the Marvel Cinematic Universe starring Benedict Cumberbatch as Dr. Stephen Strange, an arrogant surgeon who, after his hands are damaged in a car accident, seeks rehabilitation via mystical means and becomes a powerful sorcerer. So, Iain, I know that you've seen this film before.
I have indeed.
Let's talk about it. What are your thoughts of Doctor Strange?
Doctor Strange. Well, I think it's rather good. You thought I was going to say strange.
Sure.
Or you might not have.
I didn't think you were, because I don't think... It's a lot of things, this film, but it's not that strange.
Yeah, the little bits of strange adjacent pieces in there. I don't know. I actually really enjoy this film. It's one of my favourite MCU films.
Oh, right, okay.
And, well, I'm curious about your take, because I can't remember if we've ever actually spoke about this. You're a good old fan of the start of a journey, or an origin.
Mm-hmm.
Did you like this origin of this particular character?
I did. Yes. Yeah, I do like this film.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think it's good. You know, it's not the top of the Marvel pile for me. It's probably somewhere solidly mid-table.
Right.
But no, generally speaking, I think it's pretty good. It's a pretty good film. It follows a lot of the traditional Marvel origin story beats. There's a couple of twists and turns on it, but generally speaking, it's almost a little bit too formulaic. That might be its fault.
Yeah, there's parallels to Iron Man 1 in this especially.
Yes, yeah, and you almost feel like they deliberately went that route, which they did a lot with a lot of these origin stories. So, but, I mean, generally speaking, it's pretty good, which is actually a bit of a blessing, considering the last 4 episodes we've done are Wanted, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, The New Mutants, and The Losers. I will take pretty good over that at this stage.
So you'd rather watch this film than any of those 4 films?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I like this film, so yes, I'd rather watch this film than a lot of things.
Okay, that's good then.
What is it about the film then for you that puts it at the top of the Marvel tree?
Well, yeah, it's definitely near the top. I wouldn't say at the top, but it is definitely near. Obviously, this was like the first film that opened up the MCU to sorcery and sorcerers and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
They sort of touched or danced around it with Thor, but then that was kind of gods rather than magic.
Yeah, and especially in the early days of Thor, they really heavily lent into they're just aliens and we just don't understand their technology. And then they sort of eased off on that after a while and started introducing Fenrir and stuff like that.
But yeah, I quite enjoy the opening, actually. It's quite gory. Well, I say gory is the wrong word. It's quite gruesome, I guess, the one in the library.
Yeah.
Even if you don't see any blood and it cuts away, it is some guy just having his head chopped off, which is quite gruesome for the MCU, or at least it was at the time when this came out, because it has moved on a bit since then.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And the car crash as well, some of the surgery scenes when Strange has got his hands in those mechanical vices with all the pins in his hands.
Yeah.
Scott Derrickson comes from a history of horror movies.
Okay.
So I think that shines through in those sequences, these sort of moments of gore and terror. I think that works to the film's strengths.
That's interesting, because that's not the first director or producer, I guess, that's come from horror films in the past. You know, we've got James Wan with Aquaman, this obviously, and then Sam Raimi, who did the Spider-Man. And then obviously he's back doing the sequel of this. So yeah, that's actually quite interesting. I didn't know that.
I think it's because it horror tends to be a low budget medium, so it allows Marvel to, or superhero films in general, to recruit from this sort of self-taught and low income pool, as it were. So, they like to recruit, they don't tend to go for big famous directors. Sam Raimi actually doing Multiverse of Madness is a bit of a strange one because obviously he's a very established director. But we'll speak about that another time, I'm sure, because obviously we are doing this episode. Multiverse of Madness is coming out about 2 weeks' time from point of recording this.
Yep. But yeah, I think we should do the whole character rundown as we all tend to. What did you think of Stephen with a PH, not a V, in this? What's his name? Old Cumberland sausage, Cumberbatch.
Benedict Cumberbatch, yeah. I think he is... I think he plays the arrogance really well. And I like that they don't ever get rid of it entirely, and that's similar to the comic book that we'll be discussing later. Just because Stephen learned a lesson in humility when he had his hands crushed and all of this, he's still the same guy. He's just, his priorities have been refocused. So he is still quite an arrogant guy, even after the accident and everything else. He just transitions from being an arrogant surgeon to an arrogant magician.
Sorcerer. Magician.
Sorcerer, yeah. Doing card tricks.
I think you do need... Is this your card? No. Oh, I think you do need to have some sort of arrogance when you are that good at something.
Yeah.
But the first time that we see him in surgery in the hospital, it does feel like an episode of Grey's Anatomy. Just like those people having fun and him saying the titles to those songs. I'm like, I wouldn't want my surgeon to do that. If I was having an operation and in my brain, I don't want them pissing around and trying to guess some songs. It does show how good he is, but also arrogant at the same time, which... I like the scene, but I'm saying I don't want to be the one on that table.
No, it's not a prominent role. Yeah, no, he plays it quite straight. Even when he does the comedy, he still plays it quite straight. And you can see that sort of classically trained history of acting coming through, even though what he's saying is ridiculously outlandish. And we see that in the Avengers and things like that going forward as well. So yeah, his American accent, he does that sort of Hugh Laurie American accent, which is generic, nondescript American. That's all you kind of think the film's a bit strange, but you can't quite put your finger on why. But it does the job.
Yeah, he does have... I mean, this is pretty much House being trained as a sorcerer. He's arrogant, he's the top of his game, top of his league, if you will. So maybe he used House as the voice. I don't know.
It's a lot of similarities. And obviously, House is based on Sherlock, and what is Cumberbatch's most famous role?
Doctor Strange.
Doctor Strange.
Oh. Dr. Sherlock.
That's the one. So what other characters you got?
Wong. The only thing that I've put down for Wong is he's the Guardians of the Books. That's about it. That's what I put down in my notes.
I love Benedict Wong. All the way back from things like the IT Crowd. I always like to see him in stuff when he crops up. And I'm really glad, like, subsequent to this film, he's gone on to have quite a prominent role, a surprisingly prominent role within the MCU. So he showed up in Shang-Chi and Avengers and things like that. And it's really nice to see that. Yeah, no, I really like Wong. I think he's funny. I think it could have been a racially insensitive role, this sort of Asian martial artist manservant. But no, I think they handled it well.
Oh, I mean, since you brought it up, talking about racial roles, I mean, you knew this was going to come up, surely. Let's talk about our favourite.
Yeah. It's not the first time whitewashing has come up on this show, has it?
Woo! Whitewashing. Yay. Can't get enough of the stuff. So I think the way that I thought about this version of whitewashing was comparing it to Iron Man 3. So Iron Man 3, you've got Mandarin, and then it becomes that it's the other guy, Guy Pearce, can't remember his name.
Spoilers for Iron Man 3, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. For that film that came out like 15 years ago. No, not that much. Anyway, so you got like an Asian man being replaced by an American white guy. That's a bit on the nose. This... I don't mind it. It doesn't take away from... No, it doesn't spoil it for me, I guess, because you have that little jokey scene where he first walks into the temple room place, and there is an old guy there who's Asian. You go, oh, well, that is the guy then. And it's not. It's Tilda Swinton. Yeah. So I'm not fully against it, but I'm not fully on board with it. Is kind of what I'm saying. I sit in the middle of really.
It's an awkward one because
not terrible.
I feel like if they had gone the traditional comic book route and had it be an elderly Asian man, it would have been playing into a whole bunch of other stereotypes. This sort of Asian mysticism. It would have been something we've seen a million times and something that is a bit of a stereotype. So you can't really win either way. It's nice to see that they've introduced a prominent role for a female, so that's good. Why it couldn't be a young female Asian person, I don't know.
True.
It's a bit of a strange one. It's going to keep coming up. You do get the feeling that it was done. There's a certain amount of pandering to a Chinese market that has happened with this film, removal of things like Tibet and situations like that. So I do get the feeling that there has been some compromises made when it comes to the whole Asian representation, particularly when it came to Tibet and things like that.
Yeah.
And prominent roles.
Pretty much. Nothing really else to say on that. If you want more on our views on whitewashing, go back to Bane in The Dark Knight Rises. There you go. And other ones.
And multiple other episodes. Yeah, no, it comes up a lot in comic book films. And realistically, two white guys are not the people to listen to about whitewashing.
Of course
There's
not.
probably a lot more knowledgeable people than us out there. But,
we're just two guys talking about comics.
so let's move on, because obviously we got another race-bent character in this film, which is Baron Mordo, Chiwetel Ejiofor, who I think doesn't get a lot to work with, but they do obviously set him up for later films for a more prominent role. Whether that comes or not, we will see.
Yep.
But I like Chiwetel Ejiofor. I've liked him since he was in Serenity.
And The Old Guard.
Yes. Yeah, well, less so that.
Famous role.
But yeah, I mean, Baron Mordo here, I like that he's almost an ally to Strange. He's more of a hero in this film. It's only really at the end where he does the heel turn. What are your thoughts on him?
I don't think he gets enough of the spotlight, really.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much I knew about Doctor Strange before watching this, to be honest. I think I knew that he was a bad guy. So when I watched the trailer and saw the film, I was like, oh, he's good. They've changed it. But then with that sort of idea at the back of my head that surely he'll become a bad guy at some point, and that's pretty much what he does. Yeah, he's all right. He does what he's given. I don't think he makes anything special of the role, but that's not his fault, I guess. Maybe the script.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's all right.
There's a lot of underwritten roles in this film, including the next two characters we should probably speak about, which is Caecilius, the bad guy.
Yep.
And also the love interest, Christine Palmer.
There
we
you
go.
go.
That's the.
I couldn't help you. I completely forgot.
Well, this is it, and this shows how underwritten that character is.
Yeah.
She sort of disappears for about a third of the movie, then comes back in at the end. And for the role that it is, she's okay, but it's a very underwritten role, that one.
I do quite like... So let's talk about her first then. So I do quite like her and Strange. I can see them as a couple. This is like pre him becoming a sorcerer. And I do quite like them together on screen. I think the chemistry works. But then again, it doesn't not work. So it could be anyone, really.
Yeah.
It's not a prominent role. It doesn't have a major impact on the plot.
No.
Yes, he does come back so she can perform surgery on him.
Yep.
But that could have been anyone in the hospital. That could have been the guy that did the operation the first time and got some redemption, I guess. Maybe do like a little bit of a redemption arc for whatever his name was, Nick West.
Nicodemus West.
Nicodemus, sorry to use his proper name. But yeah, I mean, again, she's there. She's in the trailer for the next one, so I kind of want to see what they give her to work with in the next one.
Yeah, she's not in it a lot, and she appears to be getting married to someone who's not Doctor Strange, so presumably not a huge role in the next one, but we'll see about that as well.
Find out.
And lastly, Caecilius. So speaking of underwritten, underutilized bad guys, he's not bad by any stretch, but again, much like Mordo, he's not given enough to work with to really make an impact, I feel.
Do you think it was a bit of a wasted actor for that particular role?
I don't know about that, because he is a good actor, Mads Mikkelsen. I really enjoy his work. I kind of feel like if you had a lesser actor in that role, something like we saw with Thor the Dark World, for instance, Christopher Eccleston, it becomes an absolutely nothing role. I think this is an underwritten role, but I think what you remember about it is that Mads Mikkelsen gave a good performance.
Yeah.
Whereas if you had put someone else in that role, if you didn't want to say, oh, well, let's not waste an actor, let's put a lesser actor in there, it really would have just disappeared to the background, that villain. You need someone with a bit of charisma to sell it, I think.
Yeah, but then, well, it's sold to us as if he's the bad guy, he's the big bad, and then you realise that he's just a pawn. He's just a
pawn,
a follower of evil, I guess. So you've got the big bad, Dormammu, him. Well, a bit of a random question. Random question time. My favourite part of the show.
I always love these. Catch me off guard, but all right.
Who do you think is more powerful, Dormammu or Galactus? I don't mean in the films. I just mean overall with what you know. Because you know more than me about these two characters.
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult one because obviously one is of our realm, Galactus, and the other is in the Dark Dimension. I think Dormammu is more of a unknown evil in a way. He's one of these sort of nebulous entities that when they turn up will cause destruction, whereas sort of Galactus is this sort of force of nature. I think I seem to remember there was a storyline in which it was a bit of a crap storyline, to be honest, in which Galactus ended up in the Dark Dimension, and there was this whole thing about, oh, he's a being of science and he's in a land of magic, and therefore, I don't know, it was a bunch of nonsense, but
comics.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the answer is whoever is writing the comic that day is the more powerful.
Right,
yeah,
fair enough.
Depends.
It's just because, well, what I've seen and what I've read of them both, well, I've not read anything of Dormammu. Anyway, from what I've seen anyway, it appears to me that Dormammu can engulf dimensions, whereas Galactus can engulf planets. So, in my opinion, Dormammu would be more powerful or would win it in a battle between those two.
Yeah, I think a lot of Strange's villains, there was something very Lovecraftian about them in a way. It was a lot of the unknown is the real enemy, as this sort of, nebulous impending doom that would be coming. It's not like they're physically just going to come up and punch you in the face. It's, there's no strength test. It's if they arrive, something bad will happen and we won't be able to stop it.
Yeah.
It's that sort of thing. So probably, yeah, it would be Dormammu. But again, he's been defeated so many times. The same thing we saw with Galactus when we covered Fantastic Four. He starts off as this impending threat that everyone is afraid of, and the more often he shows up and the more often he's beaten, the less threatening he becomes.
Yeah, well, there you go. Anyway, to pull it back to Doctor Strange, let's get it a little bit more on track, I guess.
Yes, yeah.
Something that I really do love about this film is the Kirby-inspired CGI, especially when he's going through all the different worlds and the dimensions and whatever. It's literally like they've taken Kirby's art and just put it on screen.
There's some really amazing stuff in here. The abstract design with some of those really trippy sequences. It's about as outlandish as I've seen in a sort of mainstream superhero film.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be out of place at the end of 2001, A Space Odyssey or something like that. It's that sort of outlandish, abstract direction and some sort of freaky stuff, which it really, like you say, is very indicative of early Doctor Strange work. It's what sets Doctor Strange apart in his early days, is this really sort of quirky Ditko art style that was so strange and so outlandish and reminded everyone of a drugs trip, which a lot of this film does.
Yeah, pretty much. I don't want to take any assumptions, but I'm pretty sure Kirby must have done something in his youth to come up with all these art styles and all this artwork that he does. It is unbelievable, really.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know.
That's some on-the-air research.
It is. You know that he was drawn by Ditko, not Kirby.
Oh, Ditko. Well, potato.
Well, not at all, because Ditko was very, very right-wing, very straight-laced.
Fine.
Probably would never touch drugs in a million years and became a massive shut-in recluse in his later years. So, yeah, he was a big fan of Ayn Rand and things like that. So I don't think he did, which is the bizarre thing, is that his art style was so out there, but he as a person was so straight-laced. It was really juxtaposition of these two things.
Well, there you go. That's my fault for getting Kirby and Ditko confused.
Yeah, well, they were working around the same time, and between them and Stan Lee, sort of the big dream team at the time, making 90% of Marvel's current lineup. But yeah, speaking of the comic books then, shall we move on to the comic book for this episode?
Yeah, why not? It would be strange not to.
It's the joke that keeps on giving. So we're not going to be covering early Ditko and Stan Lee Doctor Strange. We are in fact going to be doing Doctor Strange The Oath, which is a 2007 5-issue limited series written by Bryan K. Vaughan and drawn by Marcos Martin, in which the titular doctor is brought to night nurse for medical attention after being shot in his sanctum sanctorum by someone looking to steal a mysterious elixir.
That sounds painful. I don't want to be shot in my sanctum sanctorum.
Wow, who does? So, reading this for the first time then, so what were your thoughts?
Well, yeah, you've pretty much summed up the plot there, I guess. It's a very self-contained story. However, I do think it's a bit too polished for me. The artwork is very clean. Even when Strange goes into Brigand's mind, I think that's his name. I think I would want a little bit more quirkiness in there, like the artwork that we were just talking about. I think I want a little bit more to it. It does feel like a new comic. I think we had this chat a while ago. I think it was the New Mutants, and I compared a couple pages. But yeah, this just feels like a very new, clean artwork style, which I think I prefer the older stuff, really.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I know exactly what you mean. It's self-contained, as you say, but it is a very polished piece. It has a lot going on, but at the same time, it's quite a simple storyline. And it's kind of what we've seen with Bryan K. Vaughan before, is he does very popular sort of page turners as far as stories go, which is why I think this works really well as an introduction to Doctor Strange. I think if you said to someone, this is a really good story to get you in to figure out what it is, but it is mostly Earth-based, and it's nowhere near as outlandish and quirky as some of his other stories. And comparing it to something like New Mutants, which you were just saying about, Bill Sinkovich's art in that in the 1980s is very stylized. It gives everything a lot of personality, and likewise Ditko's early, really colourful art that he had in Doctor Strange. Whereas this, nothing against Marcus Martin's work, it's very good art, but it is a little bit, like you say, polished for a Doctor Strange comic book. I agree.
Yeah, I'd expect more. I'd expect a little bit more of the sort of crazy or the wacky.
Yeah.
And I won't say the pun again. Just a little bit more crazy and weird, I think.
Yeah, is there another word for weird that you can use?
Unusual.
Unusual, yeah, fair. Okay, yeah.
Dr. Unusual.
But, as I said, I think some of those Silver Age comic books, as we've discovered doing this podcast, can be a little bit jarring to a modern reader, especially someone who's not used to comic books. So if someone came to me and said, I want to read more about Doctor Strange, where do I start? I've never read comics before. I would probably direct them towards this regardless. Because it is actually a little bit safer, a little bit more down to earth, a little bit less abstract. If someone came to me and said, I've never watched a film and I want to watch a film, I wouldn't direct them towards Lars von Trier or David Lynch. You're not going to say, go and watch these weird films. You're going to say, okay, here's, I don't know, a good crowd pleaser film. Here's Star Wars. I don't know.
Here's Green Lantern.
Yeah, that's what I'd say. Is that your go-to? If someone said, I've never watched a film before, what would you recommend? Green Lantern.
Yeah, why not?
It's a film. Of all the films, it certainly is one.
Sodom. I mean, there's only a couple of films out there, so here's a film. Watch this first, and then you don't have to watch any other film ever again.
Great. You've done them a service.
Yeah, pulling it back to the comic then.
Yes, go for it.
So, there's a few characters in this, and I do love a good old pop-up of a character or so. Someone that I hadn't ever heard of is the bad guy, and I use that in inverted commas, Brigand.
Brigand.
Am I saying that right?
Yes.
Brigand, yeah. No idea who he is. Oh, but I do know he's evil because he uses Hitler's gun.
He does use Hitler's gun. I liked that. I liked the fact that the Hitler's gun had residual negative voodoo. Yeah, no, Brigand, I mean, a minor villain.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised you haven't heard of him. He's a very minor thief villain. And that's kind of the plot here as well, is the idea that Strange didn't think anything else of him. So when he pulls out Hitler's gun and shoots him, he's a bit surprised. And then obviously the main villain for the piece is Nicodemus West.
Yes.
Who?
The rival surgeon. Well, in the film he is.
Yes, and then in the comic book he ends up working for a pharmaceutical company. So the real villain is pharmaceutical companies in the comic book, which has got a little bit of a message there.
Yeah.
Not too deep a message, but sprinkled in.
Yeah.
But I quite like the idea of, I mean, he only exists in this 5-issue run, Nicodemus West, as far as I'm aware. He was invented for this. And I like the idea of having what Doctor Strange could have been. This idea of, here's a surgeon, he's got some mystical knowledge, but instead of doing that, he just walked away and he went and did something else, And I liked the idea of a sort of dark reflection, but one who's not actually especially evil.
I think that adds to, like I was saying, it's too polished, it's too self-contained, is that I do like the bit that West feels bad because he's not been able to fix Strange's hands. So he goes off to try and find him, then try and help him. And then it's just a coincidence that he's like, oh, he was here. Oh, well, while I'm here, I'll just learn how to be a sorcerer. It's just like, it's a little bit on the nose for me.
Well, he learnt a little bit of magic and then abandons that principle. And I think this is it. It's a pale reflection. So it's, what if Strange wasn't quite as dedicated, wasn't quite as intelligent, wasn't quite as skilled? What if he was just a normal person, a decent surgeon, but not a brilliant one? So, yeah. I quite liked that idea, and I like the ultimate villain being a pharmaceutical company, but it is on the nose, and it is obviously not where the emphasis of this comic book lies.
Yeah.
It's not where it's really dedicated. But Also, other positives I think are I like the way it sets up the night nurse Wong Doctor Strange dynamic for new readers.
Yeah.
It's got that double page splash to retell Strange's origins, so anyone new to this will not be left behind.
Yeah, which I do find interesting about his origin in the comic compared to the film, because it says that he crashes his car whilst on his way to a patient.
Yeah.
So I thought, oh, okay, maybe this version of Strange isn't as much of a cock than in the film, but he's still cocky, he's still a big dick.
Yeah, he's still got that arrogance that never really goes away, and all he does is being, I'm the best surgeon in the world, and I'm really arrogant about it. Okay, now I'm the best sorcerer in the world, and I'm really arrogant about it. Just transfers that.
Yeah.
But yeah, what do you make of the representation of some of these other characters then? Because obviously you will be familiar with Wong from the films. You will also be familiar with Night Nurse in a way from both the Marvel shows on Netflix and obviously Christine Palmer. This Night Nurse, however, is neither of those.
Yeah.
This is Linda Carter.
Yeah. So a little bit confusing because I didn't realise who was who to begin with. Yeah, like you said, Night Nurse appears in Daredevil, Jessica Jones, and Luke Cage. I don't think she's been in anything else.
She's been in Doctor Strange.
Wow,
but
yeah,
a different Night Nurse.
That's it. This one I'm talking about is Rosario Dawson. Is that her name?
Yes.
That's her name.
Who's playing Claire Temple.
Yes, so you got Claire Temple. And then, I mean, we don't really get to see a lot of the sort of night nurse persona, if you will, in the film.
No.
It's literally his colleague that helps him, and that's it.
Yeah.
Or his ex-partner or whatever. Yeah, so I do like seeing characters that I know a little bit about. I guess, so this would have come out after the Netflix shows, or when they were still being made, wasn't it?
This comic book?
No, the film.
Oh, yeah, it would have been, I think, yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know who had the necessary rights to call their character a night nurse. That name doesn't actually come up in either the TV shows or in the film. So I guess it's more like a we'll wait and see kind of thing. We'll see what sort of pans out.
It doesn't really fit anywhere within the MCU because I suppose more so with the TV series than the films. But obviously Night Nurse's MO in the comic books is that she patches up injured superheroes.
Yeah.
So she is somewhere that, the first scene of this comic book is Aranya and Iron Fist in the waiting room.
Your favourite.
Bonus points for this comic book for not only having Iron Fist in the opening scene, also having a shout out to Iron Fist later on in the comic book with Doctor Strange saying, I'm not as good a martial artist as Iron Fist, but I can still kick your ass, or whatever he said. But yeah, bonus points for that. But I like the idea that superheroes like that, they can't be in and out of normal hospitals all the time. They've got secret identities. Yeah. Having somewhere to go and having a superhero doctor, night nurse, who they can go and get patched up by. That is definitely more Claire Temple's role in the Netflix show than it is here. Although that is essentially what happens. We have almost a recreation of that scene. Instead of getting shot, he gets stabbed. And then he ends up being healed by Christine Palmer and coming out of the astral projection to talk to her whilst he's done surgery. Yeah,
I mean, that's probably a page to screen adaptation that, I mean, we've not really touched on it so far in this episode, but with these MCU films, as we've said in the past, they're not going to be book to screen, are they? They could be taking little pieces or panel to screen.
Yeah.
Which we've seen a lot, but they can't really work these stories into the MCU. Or I feel like they could have worked in this one.
Easily, yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing.
They almost set up for it a little bit as well. You could easily see Nicodemus West could follow that same options.
Yeah.
You could easily do this film, but it's never been something that Marvel have done. They've never done the straight adaptation of one storyline A to B, which I think works in its favour. To a certain degree, it means that comic book readers aren't just going into something expecting to see, when we watch things like Invincible, the animated series, which is a very faithful adaptation. I've read that comic book, so I know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
When I go to see a Marvel film, I don't necessarily know what's going to happen because they have changed a certain amount of it.
Yeah.
They just sort of pick bits that they want to use and they say, right, well, just throw that in for the fans, but it's a whole new story.
Just to sort of hop back a bit to what you said earlier on about this team up of these three characters. Is this something that continues in the comic, or was this like its own piece?
Well, Wong and Doctor Strange always been teamed up, long-standing friendship, those. And to a certain extent, Doctor Strange and Night Nurse were paired up after this. But it's something that wasn't massively followed up on lately. I seem to remember she's not appeared a huge amount in recent years.
Okay, fair enough.
But Wong, on the other hand.
Wong's been there for a while, I assume.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what did you make of Wong in the comic books? Because obviously he's a bit different to what he is in the film.
He's got, I think, a lot more to do, I guess. Well, because the film is an origin story, you see the start of their friendship, where in the comic it's very obvious that he's been taking care of Strange, or at least been there for him over the years.
Yeah.
And he's got a lot more respect for Strange in a way that he won't even tell him that he's dying. But yeah, I do like it. I do like him. I think it would be unkind to compare these versions of characters on the screen to the book.
Yeah.
Like I said, they're at two different points of their life. But yeah, I mean, I like it. Not really much else to say.
That's fair.
Not too sure where I'm going.
I find this is a better representation than others, but certainly some of the representations of Wong in the comic book were a little bit, he is the subservient party in that relationship. He is a servant, essentially. I like that they made it a bit more of a friendship in this comic book. They make it a bit more of a, like you say, I respect Strange and I therefore don't want to worry him.
Yeah.
And then you have Strange repaying the favour, trying to do everything he can to save Wong when he finds out about his cancer. So, yeah, that dynamic is really nicely played here. It's a delicate line because historically it has been one that is a little bit on racially unsteady ground, because Wong in the comic book does not have magical powers. He uses martial arts, and he is a defender of Strange. Whilst he was in his astral form and stuff like that, he would defend Strange's body. I like that the films have made him a magic user.
Yeah, he's part of the team. He's not like a manservant, like we said earlier on.
Exactly.
You get to a bit of a touchy subject at that point.
Yeah, exactly. And I think this comic does a better job of that without getting rid of the whole dynamic entirely. But I think this does a better job of showing that they're actually friends, not master-servant role.
Yeah, exactly. Something that I did like in the comics that I saw is that they say about Dimension Pi, it's a pocket realm in between Dimension 3 and 4.
Yeah.
Because obviously pi is 3.14 something or other. I'm not going to say all the numbers, but yeah, that's just something that I did like and I picked up on in the comic.
Have we stumbled into egg territory here? Dimension Egg?
Oh, we might have done. Wow, you may as well play that theme song.
Iain's egg hunt. Iain's egg hunt. Iain's egg hunt.
I'm not yoking you. Well, here we are, back in the world of eggs in the MCU, my favourite.
Yeah, there's a lot of them.
There's a lot of them, so I'm not going to do all of them, but I'll do some of them. So I can't not start with the Stan Lee cameo. This time, he plays an old man reading on a bus.
And not the first or last time, I don't think.
I guess he learned how to drive a bus, because after this, he appears as the bus driver, so...
Yeah, and then he was also old man reading on a train in Captain Marvel.
True. He likes reading. He likes public transport. But in this, he's reading The Doors of Perception, which is a book all about the effects of psychedelic drugs.
Oh, okay, interesting.
There you go. That's a little cheeky little Easter egg to start off with.
Yeah. Because if either of the people who created Doctor Strange did psychedelic drugs, I feel like it would be Stan Lee.
Well, okay. I can't prove you wrong on that one. And something that we didn't really touch on was the humour in this film. But there's a sort of humorous bit, if you will, where, what's his name? It's not Mordor, because I keep calling him that.
Mordo.
I keep calling him Mordor, but Mordo, thank you. I always call him Mordor. When he passes a bit of paper to Strange and it says Shambhala, and he's like, what is this? Some sort of whatever? It's like, no, it's the Wi-Fi password. Ha ha ha. Hilarity ensues.
It was in every trailer for this film. And we saw that
Yeah.
joke a million times before the film came out.
Yeah, so that actually could be a little Easter egg, because there was a comic from 86 called Into Shambhala, which includes the death of the Ancient One.
Wow, there you go. That does sound like an Easter egg to me.
There you go. So, nom nom nom. Are you full of eggs yet? Because I've got plenty more.
No, keep stuffing them in me, baby.
Again, we mentioned the car crash earlier on. This happened on a very specific date, the 2nd of February, 2016, which is Groundhog Day.
Oh.
And I just love how this is a tiny, tiny foreshadowing into the later bit of the film where he faces Dormammu.
Yeah, no, that's a nice... that's a good egg. Good egg.
Good egging. Good egg hunting.
Has anyone involved with the film said whether that was intentional, or is that just happenstance?
I mean, you got to think it's intentional, surely. I don't know. I've not done that research. I found the egg. I've not researched the egg.
You found the egg, you displayed the egg, your job's done.
Yes.
Perfect.
I'm like a curator of an egg museum. I'll put them up on show and you can go away and do your own work.
Yeah.
But anyway, moving on.
Just like real museums that make the people do their own work.
Yeah, sure, why not?
You want to know more about this? Fuck off. Come on.
Go pick up a book. Go on, off you go. But yes, also, a particular band comes up in this twice, actually. Pink Floyd. When Strange is driving in the car, you can hear Interstellar Overdrive by Pink Floyd.
Yep.
And a bit of the way into the film, after his crash, he's wearing a T-shirt with the cover of Pink Floyd's Sin Barton's solo album, The Madcap Laughs. Why do I bring up Pink Floyd, I hear you ask?
Hey, Iain.
Yeah?
Why are you going on about Pink Floyd so much?
Oh, thank you. This is because Pink Floyd actually used a Doctor Strange artwork on their cover of A Saucer Full of Secrets.
Okay.
There you go.
So returning the favour.
Yeah, a little back and forth, a little two-way Easter egg.
The old reach around.
The old, no. The old give and take of an egg. I don't know. But yeah, I feel like it's time to wrap this up.
Okay.
And the only thing that I can think of that goes with that kind of awful segue is, as you said, there's a pharmaceutical company in the comics called Timely Pharmaceuticals,
yes.
which anyone who knows about the Marvel history is that Marvel Comics used to be called Timely Comics.
They did indeed. Yes, that one is
there you go.
Good stuff.
Yes.
Some good eggs in there. I am stuffed to the brim with ovum. Let's move on to the conclusion. So, the film, the comic book, what were your thoughts?
Film, like I said, one of my favourite MCU films, and I think it's down to Doctor Strange portrayed by Cumberland.
Mm-hmm.
I think he was the perfect choice, really. I don't always like to say I can't think of anyone else doing this role, but he does it so well that I think he definitely paved his way through the MCU with this role.
Yeah. Like, I can imagine if it weren't Cumberbatch doing this, he wouldn't have played such a prominent role going forward.
Exactly, yeah.
And certainly we wouldn't be seeing what we're thinking is going to happen in Multiverse of Madness. But
I like that this one opened up the door to the unknown, and the second one's going to explore all the options we've got going forward with the MCU.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of mentions of the multiverse in this film, but obviously, subsequently, they have explained that the multiverse did not exist before Loki because of divergent timeframes and stuff like that. So it doesn't all stack up.
Yeah, saying that, they do say that the sling rings are a way to travel throughout the multiverse. Yeah, anyway. Yeah. Your views on the film?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is, for me, firmly middle of the road as far as the Marvel Cinematic Universe is concerned. I like it, and I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to be quite a formulaic origin story. Ultimately, there's some likeable characters, some funny lines, more funny lines than I remembered, a decent amount of fan service, and some really interesting, trippy visuals, and obviously an underdeveloped villain.
Yeah.
But, that's par for the course for a Marvel origin story. So all of these things you expect from an MCU film, but it does them well. And I think it's also one of these films, like we've seen with Age of Ultron, where a lot of the things become more important subsequently, have been made better in retrospect.
Yes. I've not yet, but I will go back to the What If episode. I was going to watch it before we did this, but I didn't have time. But yeah, I think going back to that after watching this so closely, I think it would be more entertaining, and there's probably things that I missed.
Yeah.
Pulling it back to the conclusion, the comic, I didn't think it was amazing, didn't think it was awful.
Right. Okay.
I am in agreement with you that if someone comes to you and says, I want to read something about Doctor Strange, where should I start? This 5-run issue, it's quite quick, about an hour to read, maybe a little bit more. It's a good doorway into the Marvel world.
Yeah.
Without being slapped across the face with a bunch of exposition. Can't even say it. That word.
Yeah. No, 100% agree with you there. I think it is a really good introductory, self-contained story, but it's not necessarily my favourite. It's not necessarily the most developed or interesting plot that you're going to read in comic books. But if someone is looking to just get into this, take their first steps into the world of Doctor Strange or Marvel, it is self-contained enough that you don't have to read a million and one other titles around it. And there's enough going on to keep you interested easily for 5 issues. It thumps along at a good old pace.
Mm-hmm.
It is good. Again, like the film for me, both are good, not necessarily top tier, but very entertaining, very well constructed, a little too polished, but generally speaking, a good introduction to the character.
Yeah, cool.
And what about Kate's opinion of the film? Kate's quick opinion.
Kate's quick opinion, KQO.
Rolls off the tongue, doesn't it?
Yep, especially mine. She says it's visually pleasing.
That it?
Yeah, nice quick opinion there. 3 words.
Yep, good opinion. Okay. I think that's it for Doctor Strange then for this episode. So before we end the show, have you got any other business?
Yeah. I want to talk about Moon Knight.
Moon Knight?
Yes.
But Moon Knight's not finished yet. We've still got 2 more episodes of this series.
Oh, right. Yeah. Hold on. Let me just try something.
Iain, where have you been for the last 2 weeks? You just stood up, said, "Call me Randy," and left the room. What's happened?
Well, it appears that all of Moon Knight's now out.
Well, yeah, you've been gone for 2 weeks.
Well, I think I've watched it. I can't quite remember.
Well, maybe we should discuss it then and see what you do remember.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay, so Moon Knight, I mean, we'll speak in non-spoilery terms from now. There may be some spoiler discussion later on, but we will obviously give you a warning when that happens. But just generally then, avoiding plot points, what were your thoughts of Moon Knight overall?
I bloody loved it. Bloody brilliant. It definitely kept me on my toes. Each episode, I think it sort of ends like, what's gonna happen? Where are we now? Like, who and why and where? Often the 3 big questions. Your thoughts? I mean, you obviously know more about Moon Knight than I do, or I did when I started watching this.
Well, I've got to be honest, I'm not hugely knowledgeable about all things Moon Knight. I've read a bit, and I seem to know my overriding knowledge of Moon Knight is that he was a mostly street level character. He sort of fell in with that group of either the Midnight Suns who faced monsters, but also a lot of the Daredevil, Iron Fist, Luke Cage, that sort of street level New York. And that's why I thought the direction they went in the TV show was an interesting one, because they definitely lent more into the supernatural elements.
Yeah.
Whereas in the comic book, he is a highly skilled mercenary who wears a suit. The suit is just something he goes and puts on to beat people up. So it's just an outfit. It's not something he conjures. Basically, I thought the TV show deviated a lot from the comic book, but there have been various iterations of the comic. He's never had a particularly long run, so I suppose there's a certain amount of artistic license you can take. But generally speaking, and this may be an unpopular opinion, because I know that the response online has been particularly effusive. A lot of people are saying this is the best Disney Plus series. I thought it was okay.
Ooh, a mediocre Moon Knight.
Yeah, I thought it was fine. You know, I thought it was pretty good, decent little actioner. I watched it week to week, but I can't say it ever particularly excited me. I sometimes would leave it till Thursday or Friday before I'd watch it.
I think this was one of the shows that we were very much, it's Wednesday, we need to watch it. I think there was a point where we watched it on a Thursday instead. Anyway, yeah, so for us, well, I can't really speak for Kate, but just by going off the pilot then, it did feel like this is a show anyone could just start watching from episode 1. With Hawkeye, you kind of need to know the background of Hawkeye.
Yeah.
With WandaVision, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, all of them pretty much, you kind of need to know something.
Yeah, Loki, definitely.
Yeah. This is a very much, right, let's kind of put a good starting point here. And I would be interested to see how they tie this into the MCU as a whole. There's so many sort of plot threads that could be picked up or that could be followed to fold him in, or keep him his own character for a while, and then at some point he could meet up with Blade or someone.
Yeah, I can see them going the Midnight Suns route. They've already laying the groundwork with people like Blade and Black Knight. So there are rumours of a Werewolf by Night series.
Oh, thank you for saying that.
Okay. You're welcome.
I know we don't have an Easter egg hunt in this one, but there is a QR code in each episode which you can scan. I read the first issue of this once I'd seen the first episode, which was, the werewolf by night issue 32.
Which is the first appearance of Moon Knight.
Exactly, yeah. So that was 60 or 7. I can't remember now. I don't know. I don't have facts in front of me. But yeah, apart from that, I know I keep saying this, but he was involved in the Shadowland run.
He was,
He actually had his own 3-issue part of that arc. So yeah, I knew a little bit about him going in.
Yeah.
And I think as well, when people start talking about up-and-coming shows, there's a lot more stuff out there online and 10 things you might not know about, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Which then I, like the internet troll that I am, I go and hunt and find this sort of stuff and then accidentally stumble into things that could be plot points in TV shows. Yeah. Which some are, some aren't.
You've got to avoid the spoilers, especially at the moment with Doctor Strange dropping today, I think, in the UK. You've got to avoid certain websites for spoilers at the moment. But hey, I agree with you. The first episode started with a bang. I think it was a very good first episode. I then felt, however, that it trod water for the next 2 episodes.
I see it.
It introduced Layla in the second episode, but the third episode is where it really went off the rails. They played up a big, wild episode 4 in a lot of the promotion for this show, like they did with Loki. And traditionally, they've been saying that episode 4 is where it all goes crazy in all of these series. But obviously, you know what happens in episode 4, so do I. I felt that was a bit of a damp squib. I got to the end of that and went, oh, okay, cool. And then I can't help but feel that the 5th episode should have been maybe the 3rd or even the 4th episode. I think we should have had that earlier because it is the episode that lays the groundwork for a lot of the personality of the character.
Yep.
And I think that if they had had that earlier in the series, say episode 3 or 4, it would have created more of an emotional connection to the character and would have ultimately given a good 2 or 3 episodes then to complete the story, which I did think was a bit rushed in the final episode.
Yeah, I do see where you're coming from there. I quite enjoyed the build-up to the finale, or at least the last 2 episodes. I think the finale does a lot of the carrying of the show, almost. You know, you've got 5 episodes, which isn't that much to set up the Big Bang. And this is a minor spoiler alert, but it's not going to spoil it for you. I'm glad to say there is no Skybeam in this.
Yeah, there is no Skybeam.
Although we are very, very close to one, there's no Skybeam, which is good.
However, there is 2 CGI creatures just punching each other, but that happens in everything.
All right.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I think the last episode was solid as well. I think the 5th episode was very good, setting up for the character development. I just felt, as I say, there's 2 or 3 episodes. When you're only dealing with a 6-episode series, having that sort of filler in there almost, or something that's just not really advancing things in a timely manner, I kind of felt like you could have done this in a feature film. And it's almost like they took the script of a feature film and just went, let's just pad it out. But they padded it out in the wrong bit. They padded it out in the 2nd or 3rd episode, the first act, rather than padding it out a little bit at a time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, as I say, don't get me wrong. I thought it was okay. I did like it. I like the cast. Oscar Isaac clearly having a lot of fun with it. It's good to see Ethan Hawke crop up in things, and this May Calamaway is good too, playing a sort of character that's made up for the show but is based on a comic book character called Marlene Oron.
Yeah, we see that a lot. We see that a lot of the MCU, don't we?
We do, yeah. I mean, we saw it with Ned Leeds in the Spider-Man series and things like that. Taking the name of a character but making it a completely different character. This is a different thing. They've taken the more or less the full backstory of a different character, but they've recontextualized her as an Egyptian, which I think actually adds to the character in this story, and I think helps sidestep a lot of the issues around cultural appropriation, which could be levelled at this. But speaking of cultural appropriation, there's a lot of dodgy British accents.
You donut. You bloody donut.
There's so much of that. I looked it up. I don't think any of this was filmed in England at all.
No, it's not. Weirdly, just before we started this now, I was watching an interview with Oscar Isaac and, what's his name, Ali Plum. And Oscar said 0% of it was filmed in England, which is bizarre. But
well, especially because most of the other Marvel films are filmed in England, like doubling for New York. Or, I think Liverpool doubled for New York in Captain America and so on and so forth. And then the one program they've got that's actually set in Britain, they decide to film in Atlanta. Which is why I think you've got a lot of dodgy American accents. I get Mark Spector's and Stephen's British accent because, and this is where we're going to spoil it, in the early days, I mean the early parts of the series, I think we're straying into those territories. But there's a plot point about dissociative identity disorder. So he is an American's idea of a British accent, and it comes from a pulpy TV show. So that is understandable. I didn't quite get why the rest of the cast had quite dodgy British accents as well, but
I do like how he switches between the two so easily. We see it as it progresses, and it does make the fight scenes a lot more interesting when they start to work together.
Yeah.
Episode 3 onwards, I would say. Even when he's trying to pass something to Harrow, he'll move his body and it looks so real. And I love how he acts in that scene. It is like his arm's not part of him. And then also, how he just switches the way he walks and all of it when he goes between Mark and Stephen.
Yeah, he does a really good job with the physical and the verbal audio side of things. I think, I agree there. And I can't wait to see more of this character. I hope that they lean more into... In fact, this is probably a good time to go on to the spoiler section. So if you are concerned about spoilers for the final episode or 2 of the show, feel free to stop now. But otherwise, we'll go on to this. I look forward to seeing more of the character in the MCU, and hopefully with what we saw at the end of this series with him hopefully becoming a bit more of a street level character in a way.
Yeah.
You know, I think there is that sort of separation now from Khonshu and that divide between them, which will hopefully mean a bit more of a grounded take on the character, more akin to the comic book.
Yeah. I mean, I'd liked how, as I said, they start to work together as a pair. We are now in full spoilers, so this is good.
Yep.
I don't have to tread carefully. So I like that you've got Stephen in control of Mr. Knight and Mark's in control of Moon Knight.
Yeah.
So when their sort of story comes together and then they leave Khonshu, or so they think, it's a nice little ending to those two.
Yeah.
But then now we've got the third character of Jake Lockley, I want to say.
Jake Lockley, which if you are a comic book fan and you've read anything about this character, would not have been a surprise to you that he was coming up.
Yeah. I like that he's now in it. So effectively, the story of these two trying to fight for control of the body all the way through, and then at the end of it, they go, right, that's done. We can now work as a pair, as a team. We're one person, almost.
Yeah.
You've now got this third character, so we're going to probably see a lot of similar plot threads, I guess, going into the future, maybe series 2.
Potentially. And I'm hoping that that will deal with Bushman, Raoul Bushman as a villain who was mentioned in this series as the mercenary leader who killed Layla's dad.
Yep.
And yeah, I could see them setting up for potentially for that for a villain for series 2. And that would be a lot more, mercenary versus mercenary. And I can see, based on Jake Lockley's sort of ruthless portrayal, that he was perhaps a coping mechanism for the atrocities committed as a mercenary.
Yeah.
But speaking of Layla there, I quite liked that the show actually gave her powers in the end. I like that it's set up for her to be a superhero. I think it's strange that they've chose Scarlet Scarab is what they've been saying in the press releases and things. That is what the superhero's name is,
right.
which is the name of a really obscure, completely unrelated character. And it also kind of annoyed me that she didn't have hippo-based powers. She sort of got bird wings and a scarab on her chest and some swords. I thought it was kind of just like a mishmash of everything vaguely Egyptian. It was like, hey, we want an Egyptian hero. So I'm surprised she didn't have a little pyramid hat on or something.
Oh, those weird red safety dance hats. You know what I mean? From the 80s.
Fez.
No, there's I don't know. Like a red pyramid hat from the 80s or the 70s.
But my reservations notwithstanding about giant things hitting each other, giant CGI fights, I did love the kaiju fight. I loved a big old monster fight on that. And I liked that it was sort of in the background as the more grounded fight was happening in the foreground. I quite liked all that stuff in the finale. But honestly, you could have taken the first episode, the 5th episode, and the final episode, thrown a couple of bridging bits in, and that would have been a good enough film for me. I don't think it needed that extra bit of baggage in episode 3 in particular.
So I've only watched each episode once. I've not gone back to rewatch them yet.
Same.
But now that it's all out, I think what I might do at some point, not right away, is to watch them all in one night or sort of over 2 nights. Because now I know where it's going or where it's gone. I want to go back and pick up on all the little small things that's not an Easter egg, but it's sort of like hidden Again, not sort of foreshadowing, but it's things in there that they sprinkled in
Yeah.
to give you a little hint to go, by the way, this was pointed out in issue 1.
Yeah. For instance, I think May Kalamoi's credit over the end credits every time was on something that actually represents her superhero persona.
Oh.
And it obviously only makes sense at the end. Also, on the subject of Easter eggs, did you catch the name of the hospital that Harrow was escorted from at the end of the programme?
Yes. Our old friend that I can't say his name. First name is Bill. Last name is...
Sinkovich.
Yeah. New Mutants, baby.
A New Mutants from a couple of weeks ago, and one of the prominent artists on Early Moon Knight.
That's the thing, yeah. I mean, this, you said it before, but you've got so many people that have worked on this comic. There's several points that you could start. I've seen issue 1 come out several times over the years that I don't even know where to start. I probably will read some at some point.
Yeah.
But I've got a large collection to get through.
Well, I would suggest the short run of Warren Ellis comic books from a few years back and the Jeff Lemire run, which I think was 2016-ish. Those have been pretty good runs, but there's lots and lots of little disjointed short runs of this, so you can pick them up and read them. Just avoid the Bendis one, where his 3 personalities, for some reason, were Captain America, Spider-Man, and Wolverine.
Oh, that weirdly captures me.
It's awful, and just it completely disregards everything about the character up to that point and all of his alternative personalities. So, hey, don't read that. Read the Warren Ellis one, despite the fact he's a bag of shit, apparently.
Wow.
And read the Jeff Lemire one.
Well, there you go. That is your recommendation, Iain, for this week. Weekly segment.
Right, that's all for this week. Thank you all very much for listening. If you enjoyed this show, then why not subscribe and drop us a 5-star review. If you'd like to contact us, you can do so by all the usual means. I'm sure you're clever enough to figure out how by now, but for those other listeners, we'll drop some links in the description. Next episode, we're taking the zoom way over to Mega City 1, and you'll be pleased to hear that we've decided to forego the Sly Stallone version in favour of the 2012 movie Dredd. We'll be accompanying it with some classic 2000 AD in the pages of The Complete Case Files Volume 3. So join us as we gaze into the fist of Dredd.
So we're moving from something strange to something dreadful. We'll find out. Ba-doo-doo. So don your cloak of levitation.
Nope. It doesn't say levitation, does it?
Oh, does it not? Oh, sorry, I can't. This clearly can't read. So don your cloak of levity. Levity?
Levity. Means humour.
Oh, okay. But I didn't get that. All right.
We'll be accompanying it with some classic 2000 AD in the pages of... We'll be accompanying it with the... Fucking hell.
You're on there, mate.
We'll be accompanying... No, can't speak all of a sudden.
Welcome to my world.